Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast, where we throw out the old blueprint so you can become who you were always meant to be. I'm your host, Jason Smith, and if you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends on social media and tag me in it at JBirdFit. Steve, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how you ended up on TikTok, and I just want to reiterate, you're at over 420,000 followers on TikTok, so give us a little bit of background on how you achieved all that.
Sure. I'm just a regular, everyday kind of guy, a dad, first and foremost. And then I go to work every day and come home. We try to experience life to the fullest. Daughters play sports, so I'm running around all the time. Just pretty much living that parent life. I started TikTok pretty much when most people did back in the COVID times.
Yes.
And I wasn't into social media at all, honestly.
Did you just start because of boredom or?
Yeah. So at the very beginning, my daughters had been going to Florida. They were on their way to Florida, had to come back, had to be quarantined away from me just in case. And so I was like completely alone.
Yeah, that's hard to go through.
And I'm like, my daughters always told me about it. And I'm like, it's so stupid. And so I checked it out and I saw some videos and I'm like, let me just record a stupid video. It was something just silly, whatever. And then I got into making more videos. And it was just like, some of them started to go off a little bit. And I'm like, let's see where this goes. And then it just kept going.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your content it goes in a lot of different places. We've got a lot of funny stuff that's going on, and that's super relatable to, especially for all like the day-to-day stuff. And then we move into a lot of relationship stuff and the co-parenting. How did you get your ex-wife to hop on board with TikTok and doing this type of content and then rolling this all into doing really well with co-parenting?
So back when we first started, I was like, she was in the car. I think she was dropping off the girls or picking them up. And I ran out there with my phone because I had already developed a following a little bit. I don't know, 10 or 20,000 people at that time. And so I just made it was a random video. I asked her what she was doing there. I asked the very first time, I think I asked if I was a ladies' man because I had 20,000 followers and like 95% of them were female.
Right.
So I was just giving her a hard time. And then that one really exploded because they saw an ex is interacting in a silly way. And so I was like, we made videos here and there. We didn't really go out of our way to do it. It was like whenever we were doing a drop off or a pickup or something.
Yeah, those doorbell videos I think are the best. They make me laugh every time.
And that's a brand new thing we just started because when I moved here in November, I got a doorbell cam and she's like, hey, I left you a cam or like a nice message. So I checked it and I was like, I'm posting that. And then it just took off from there. And then I started doing it to hers as well. And hers, she seems to be getting a lot more views on hers, which is crazy, but maybe it's just because I'm more funny than she is.
That could be. Yeah. Maybe.
But no, we just have fun with it. And we're just having fun, really.
So now you've talked before about divorce. So let's go back to the beginning of you're going through divorce, you're going through some of these struggles. What were some of your struggles and then how did you overcome them? I can tell you from the people that follow me on my content, I talk a lot about dating, relationships, attachment styles, and how they impact our relationships, that how we give and receive love. And what I've noticed on your content is that you both create this space for one another and for your family to be themselves, to show up as your authentic selves, and then to celebrate that at the same time. So walk us through how, you don't have to get into the specifics of the divorce, but just when it happened and how it happened. And then as you've navigated through this, how you've been able to support each other.
So what you may not know, and I have posted about it, but it's been a while. I've been divorced twice.
Okay.
And both of them were very different. And I'm a pretty emotional guy and very painful in two different ways. And I'll explain.
Sure.
But so with Leah, who everybody knows, she left. She was going through major alcohol and drug issues at the time that she decided to file for divorce and leave. And at that time, like I was fighting, fighting, fighting for the marriage. Like I didn't ever get married to get divorced. And yeah, I'm divorced twice. And it's at first it was embarrassing, but I, what do you do? I tried. I fought how I knew how to fight.
Right.
So she left, and it was a weight off my shoulders because we were nasty together. It was gasoline and fire, and it was just explosive. It was fighting all the time. It was just bad. And you have somebody addicted to alcohol and things. And at the same time, I was an asshole. There was parts of me that was a jerk, and I think emotional desert. I can explain that. I
Yeah,
was
for
a
sure.
stuffer of my feelings, just stuffed them away. And I didn't even realize I did all this stuff. I was a little bit younger. I was under 30 years old. And you don't, I think as you grow, you learn how to process your emotions and process things and understand yourself a little better if you put in the work. And so that divorce allowed me to, first off, I'm a huge believer in you have to feel it. You have to allow yourself, as painful as it is, you have to allow yourself to feel it.
Gotta feel
Allow
it to heal
yourself,
it.
yeah, you have to hurt. And there was times I would be looking in the mirror crying, like using it as a memory to like know the kind of pain I'm
In
in.
pure agony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm when you hurt like that, you have to you naturally figure out how to get out of that. You make changes and
It's just one of
you
those feelings where you feel so incredibly isolated and alone,
Mhm.
and it feels like there's just nobody to reach out to,
Mhm.
nobody that you can talk to that's ever going to understand exactly what you're going through in that moment. And
Exactly.
I hear that similar story so often, and it's one that I've experienced myself, that isolation and that loneliness. And I just want you to know, for those who are listening, that you're not alone. Many of us have gone through this experience, and what you're currently experiencing right now. I don't know you. I haven't been in your life. I haven't been in your shoes. But I can tell you, just as we're talking right now, he and I have been through this experience of that loneliness and that isolation. And it doesn't have to be that way. And
Mhm.
just make sure that you're reaching out to other people, talk to them, and don't allow yourself to sit. Definitely feel it to heal it, but you don't have to do it alone.
And it, especially as a man, it feels like such a failure too. So you start having those negative thoughts to yourself. You failed your family. But for me, it was literally, and I don't care what somebody's relationship is, even if they're in an abusive relationship, whatever it is, and it ends. If you want a better relationship the next time around, if you want to be a better person, you have to look all inside of you and figure out, no matter what, there's things you can do better. There's things you can learn about yourself. There's things that you can learn to look out for your next relationship. Like
Exactly.
I had no clue of all these terms and things of people in relation narcissist stuff. I didn't know all this stuff. And people like are truly, some people are out there truly just taking advantage of other people. So you have all these kinds of things you put in place to look for now, and it makes, you know, the red flag stuff. You look for things and you learn about yourself and you grow. Um
So would you say you have to create a better relationship with yourself in that
yeah,
process?
exactly. It literally is all about you. You have to remember the things that you love to do, the hobbies that you might have, and you have to go do them. I There was so many times where I wanted to sit in pity in my house by myself, and people would invite me out, and I'm like, I have to. I don't feel like doing this. I have to go do this. I have to go out with my buddies, sit at a bar. Not You don't necessarily. I wouldn't recommend drinking and getting into all that stuff
Yeah,
while you're
definitely
hurting
not.
so bad. That's a bad idea. But you need to maybe go to dinner. I My best friends, they're married to each other, a man and a woman. I grew up with them, went to high school. They would invite me out to dinner with them too. And I would be like, I'll be a third wheel. Let's
Yeah.
go. And that little things like that will slowly with time bring you to a much better place. And yeah, it but I can't advocate enough for just digging inside of yourself and learning, because I went through some depression with my first divorce, and I didn't know. I was always somebody who grew up depression, whatever, anxiety, that's not real. But so my first divorce, I experienced depression. My second one, I experienced like crippling anxiety. I was cheated on. She left me for the guy. And in my gut, I sensed all this and I was asking her these questions and it just got worse and worse. And that's where the anxiety came in. I'm like, I was going nuts in my head. Anxiety was probably worse than, I don't know. They're both bad.
Sure. It's one of those things that makes you feel deeply insecure. The self doubt just piles on as you're going through that experience. And then you feel like you can't even trust your own feelings and what you're going through, let alone trust somebody else in the future.
Right. And it was, yeah, that was honestly, my second marriage was much shorter, but it was, to me, it was more surprising. And at that time, it was much more painful because I didn't really see the writing on the wall for a few years. My first divorce, it was a few years leading up to it. Second one, just, I was pretty shocked and crushed. That one, I really had to pick myself up from. Thankfully, again, you dig inside yourself, you have good family and friends around you. I can't tell you how important that is, a
And,
support system.
and so with hindsight being 2020, were there any indicators that you can look back on now and say, if I had noticed these two or three things, maybe things could have turned around and been a little bit different?
There was a few signs for me that I probably should have looked for, like before getting married. There was a few like negative things that would happen, but I don't know. It's so hard because when you're in the situation, you
Yeah, you're
don't
in
really
it.
see it. You don't see it. You don't
Yeah.
see it for exactly what it was. And after the fact, I had a lot of friends and family say that they wish they never wanted to tell me that they didn't really like her. And I'm like, come on, you
Yeah.
you could have saved me some grief. But
I thought we
you
were
know,
family. You're supposed to protect me.
yeah. But I honestly, as bad as that one hurt, I wouldn't trade it because I really stepped back and grew from that one. And after that one, allowed myself time to just be alone and learn how to like love just hanging out with myself. And I
That's
got to
so
a point,
huge.
I got to a point where I'm like, man, this is so easy and stress free. I don't know if I even want a relationship because nobody's griping at me. Nobody's depending on me except for my children. I'm like,
Well,
this,
that's how we've run into this space where you hear everybody saying, "I don't need a man," or "I don't need a woman." Like, I'm good. That's what you're experiencing. You
yeah.
experienced a bunch of trauma,
Uh,
things that you had to process. You began to process it and heal outside of a relationship.
mhm.
And then you're growing from that experience. But then at the same time, your nervous system is calming down. So, what was once activated and anxious and all these feelings, you're actually calming down and moving into a place where you're like, okay, I can do this. You might even think about dating again.
Right.
And so you put yourself in that spot. But it's just interesting. And I want to go back for a second because there's a lot of guys out there, and I receive a lot of messages regarding this. They get blindsided by the breakup or by being hit with a divorce. What is some knowledge that you can impart to these guys that feel like they're getting blindsided by this stuff? What can they do differently? What could they do better for themselves to help them out?
That's a very good question. So both of mine, I was blindsided. I feel as men, and I think stats kind of show this, but when we get married, for the most part, we are in it regardless.
In it to
Like
win it.
I think it's a pretty high percentage women divorcing men. It's much higher.
Why do you think that is? Just off the cuff.
I don't know. I don't
We
know
don't
if
have
it's
statistics here, guys. So
no,
relax.
it's
This is a
it's
conversation.
I think men, like, I know I get married and I'm like, there's no other option. That's it. I'm there to work on this marriage. This is for life. Like I literally see it as life. That's a hell of a question.
A lot of times we date potential. We get
Yep.
into these relationships early on and we're dating these people. They're amazing. We're having these great experiences. Now, in their head, they're thinking, 10 years from now, this is going to be an amazing relationship. There's going to be so much growth and expansion, and we're going to have all these amazing things, but they're not necessarily in the present moment with you in this moment, building and cultivating and nurturing and doing all these things in the relationship. Meanwhile, the other person's just in it. I'm here, and whatever happens in the future kind of happens, and we just live our lives. We do our things. We show up. You're consistent, but you're not really moving forward. And this is the disconnect: is we marry the potential. You have somebody that's happy in the moment, but happy in the moment turns into complacent for the next 10 years. So they don't necessarily grow or expand or become different or do anything different. And so whatever that story is that the other person's creating, 10 years from now it doesn't happen, then they get pissed off because this was supposed to be my life and this didn't happen. Now they're blaming the other person, being you, and now
Right.
they want out. They want a different relationship. Neither person really worked on building that relationship. We don't build
Right.
together. We just have this expectation that things are just going to magically happen. You're going to get that promotion, and then there's going to be these all these awesome vacations and this beautiful house, and it's you got to do that together. These are stages that we go through.
Very true. Yeah, I feel, and anytime something bad happens, I don't know. I think there's so much power in overcoming the hardships of a relationship. Once you can get through some hardships of a relationship, you should be that much stronger together. And I don't think
Yes.
people always see it that way. They're just like, this is so hard. This is because people get in a cycle, that negative cycle of just crap after, and they can't figure out how to get out of that cycle. And
So how did you get out of
a
it?
whole lot of self-reflection. I can't stress it enough.
So
Self-reflection
what does that look like for you? Self-reflection? Are you journaling? Are
for
you
me. So for me, depending on exactly what I'm feeling, what I'm struggling with, I will, and I'm not much of a reader. So I don't like reading, but if I'm really struggling with things, I will find some ebooks or some books or ask some people what they recommend. I've done counseling. Counseling can help wonders. If you can connect with the right counselor that understands exactly, because I've had a bad counselor. Each counselor is different, but there's, if you can find the one for you, that'll make a world of difference.
And I think that's important. The right
Yeah,
one for you.
it is.
You have to interview these people because the you just have to remember they're people too,
Mhm.
and they go through difficult things. They're having their own traumatic experiences, and then the other side of being a counselor is they're taking on everybody else's stuff daily for 8 hours a day, let's say. And
Right.
that's a lot to take on and process on their own. And a counselor needs a counselor, right? So you just want to make sure that you're interviewing these people, find the right one for you. And it's also okay to fire your counselor and find a new one if it's not working.
Yeah, and what stinks about that is sometimes it can take time to realize that it's not really working, and then you have to go to a new one and kind of
Start
start the
over.
process again,
Yeah.
which it can take a while. I got lucky the first go around with my counselor, and she just told me things about myself. I'm like, no way, you just made so much sense. I'm like, there's no way. And it gives me chills to think about, because you start to learn so much about yourself and how you deal with things and how you interpret stuff. And because a lot of issues come from miscommunication, in my opinion, or misinterpretation as well. You just, sometimes somebody says something or does something and they don't mean what somebody else is taking it as, and then that causes issues. And there's just so many, life's hard. Relationships are
Yes.
hard, and there's so many facets to it. But yeah, anytime you're in that negative cycle, because it's always easy to just point the finger, I would always suggest stepping back and being like, how can I make this better? What can I do? Even though if somebody's just awful to you, you have to step back. How can I make this better? And it goes same thing for co-parenting, because you can really despise that other person. You've been through some hell with that person. You've been through pain for that person. You have to step back. How can I make this better? Especially, how can I make this better for my kids?
Right.
And that's why I always tell people self-reflection, learning about yourself, reading books.
What's one book suggestion that you can give to the audience?
The one that really I had notes on, it was an ebook I found, and it was something about, I can't even remember what it's called. I might have to, it was on Amazon. Something about desperate, the handbook for a desperate husband or something like that.
Okay.
Something like that. And it was basically, it was like trying to win or trying to, you wanted to get your spouse back. But, and
Was it Straight Talk Tools for the Desperate
yes,
Husband?
yes,
I
yes.
got you.
Are you familiar with it?
No, I just looked it up.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I started reading that, taking notes, and it literally is just whether you win your spouse back or significant other back, it was, you're still building something for you. It was building this foundation of, I'm a confident man. Here's this, getting back to who you are, and whether, if that significant other sees it or not, you're going to be in a better place. And that one really resonated with me. And I've every once in a while, if I'm struggling or something, I'll go skim through it because I highlighted stuff in there, and good reminder. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I love that because that is the downfall of a lot of relationships is the fact that one person stops building, they stop creating, they stop being who they are, and they
Mm-hmm.
become managed almost by the other person, that I have to perform and be a certain way in order to receive love from this person that I've committed my entire life to. But in the process, I've lost myself and I've become muted. I've become a different version of me,
Right.
and you don't feel like you can get back out there and do the things that you need to do to grow and sustain yourself and to give yourself. That's why I focus so much on self-love. Get out there, go to the gym, take care of yourself, do things that excite you, but include your partner in some of that stuff at the same time, because you have to bring them along with you for this ride and this adventure that you're creating. And when you
Right.
can wrap your mind around the fact that this is an adventure that we're all having, and we get an opportunity to experience this together and to have experiences regularly, you're co-creating, right? Why wouldn't you want to create something beautiful with the person that you're with? You have to build, and it's not a competition. I think a lot of people see their relationships with their significant other as some sort of competition. And it's unfortunate that happens, but it's like you are building something for you guys as a couple for your future
Mm-hmm. Together. Yep.
together.
Together.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned that you had several revelations from being in therapy. What is one that you don't mind sharing with us? A revelation about yourself that was like, oh, okay, didn't realize that.
The emotional desert stuff.
I
I
love that,
didn't.
by the way. I've never heard that before. So
You
tell us
can
about
think.
that.
So Leah came up with that.
Okay.
She always called me an emotional desert. So I didn't realize that I was stuffing feelings. So I would just go with everything, keep my mouth shut, and then I would explode. I would explode in anger. I just thought that's what I did. I don't
So
know.
you're just totally internalizing
Yeah,
everything. You're just
just
taking it,
taking it. Yep, it's like taking a beating. Just like being a man. I put that in quotes. You can't see that, but being a man, you're taught you just be tough, suck it up. You just deal with it. It's it sucks. You just do it. And so I always just oh that I would be belittled in my marriage. I was belittled a lot, and I just took it, and so I realized I was stuffing things away, and then it would make me have these anger outbursts because everybody can only take so much, and you just explode if you don't talk about it, feel it, try to resolve it. So it's crazy because I literally have TikToks. It's been a long time, but I get pretty emotional. I'm a very emotional person. And so it's crazy to think back and think I didn't show very much emotion. I held it all in and I just, like I said, exploded. So
I can
learning
tell
that.
you there's so many guys out there that every time you do one that's emotional, it's probably some of the most relatable stuff that you put out there because it's something that so many people are going through at the same time. And it just
Mhm.
makes them feel seen, heard, and understood. So just know that when you do that, you're changing lives each time. You're connecting with people in a very different way.
And I appreciate that. And I had never planned, obviously, I didn't even plan on making content. And then I
Right.
made, I don't even know why I made an emotional video at any point, but I did. And I felt like, because like you said, men, when they're grieving a divorce or whatever, they're not going to ask for help. I still struggle. If I'm hurting, I still won't go to my best friends and be like, man, I'm hurting. I need your help. I need some advice. I need to get away. Like, we
Yeah.
don't do that regardless. And so I know if I can share being emotional, I can take like the repercussions of people making fun of me or whatever people want to do, because I know it helps people, because I wish somebody would have showed me that I could be emotional or I could feel. And honestly, it just, when you feel things, every let me back up. Everybody feels. I don't care what you want to act or how you want to act or who you want to portray. You
Right.
feel. And if you don't, you're lying to yourself.
Yeah. There's something ain't right.
Yeah. Like you said, I will I've had people, especially early on, it's been a while, but there would be men who have reached out to me divorce wise and asked like how for advice and how you do it. And I was always happy because I can, somebody talks to me and like you're saying, it's all similar
Right.
when you go through a divorce. I can still, I'm an empath. I can still feel all those feelings when they're describing things. And I can sit here and sit in their seat and relate to them. And I feel like if I can give anybody any kind of help or any kind of advice, I'm like happy to do it, because we all need people who have been there. And how did you do it?
Right.
Experience is the only, and I wish there was people that could have showed me a path of how to, but at the
Well,
same time,
there's no real handbook, right? Because every situation's different. Your background is different. All the things that you experienced as a child, then as a young adult, then through your marriages, then it just all culminates into the ending of your second marriage, and you're feeling all these thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and it's all getting rolled into one. And it's, what am I actually experiencing in this moment? Is it the divorce? Is it the breakup? Or am I experiencing something that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago that I never processed or knew how to process? And that's freaking hard.
yeah, I actually, when I went through all that anxiety, I was struggling. I'm like looking up everything I could. I ended up trying to meditate quite often,
Yeah.
because I like, when you're in full blown anxiety, pacing around, like it is a struggle to get out of your own head. It
Yep.
is so hard. And I,
And
so I,
it makes meditation impossible.
yeah, I'm like just trying to calm myself down and think different thoughts, because you think all the worst thoughts, and it's, gosh, anxiety is, it's not fun.
So, what are some tools that you've developed for yourself to help you kind of manage your anxiety?
I don't really, I don't really experience it. It was like a circumstantial kind of anxiety.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it was because of all the things I knew in my gut, and then all the things that were happening but wouldn't be admitted to. I just, at that time I looked up all these tools. I'm trying to meditate, trying to,
It was that uncertain certainty,
yeah.
right? You knew things were happening, but you didn't
Mhm.
have necessarily proof of what was happening in that moment. And so it created all this anxiety around and that uncertainty and that buildup. And there was no way to get all that excess energy off
Mhm.
because what you wanted was somebody to just say the truth and what was happening in that moment.
Exactly. Exactly. I would constantly check my phone for updates. I would constantly check her social media for updates.
What kind of updates were you looking for?
I don't know, just like life.
Okay.
Because there would be nights, weeknights, she wouldn't come home till 2 or 3 in the morning. And she was saying it was business meetings. And I'm like, there's no way. Because they started it off as business partners and they would meet clients, like it was construction business, and they would meet clients whenever they wanted, 8, 9, 10, 11, and wouldn't see and wouldn't see her till 2 or 3 in the morning, which still didn't make sense to me. Obviously, I don't think it makes sense to anybody. Nobody's staying up that late on a weeknight to talk about a construction project on their house.
No.
And then there would be times where I knew she would be an hour and a half away and it would be midnight and then wouldn't have a clue. I would get no text message or nothing of when she would be on her way home. And then all of a sudden she'd be there. So that's when I'm pacing around the house. I'm like, she should be home by now. Pacing
Right.
around. You don't know if something's wrong with her. I knew what was going on, but it was just
There's that part of you that's hoping that's not
sure.
what's going on. There's going to be a rational explanation for all of this. And unfortunately, that just wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Let's move into co-parenting. I saw a
Yeah.
video that you made. I love the mindset that you have, that you only have one shot with your kids
Mhm.
to give them all the love and all the experience and all the knowledge that you have and everything that you've done up until this point. It looks like you guys pride yourselves on being really good co-parents and doing it for the kids and avoiding some of the pitfalls and the mistakes that you see a lot in different relationships where they're constantly angry and bickering and fighting with each other, and they do it in front of the kids. And I think one thing that people need to realize is when you do that, you're teaching your kids how relationships are in the real world. And so if
Mhm.
you can have a better relationship as a co-parent, you're teaching them how to build better bonds and continue to move forward regardless of what's happening in that moment with you guys. The video I saw was on sports. And so how do you guys handle different sporting events when you go to those for your kids?
Like for instance, this weekend we have volleyball and gymnastics. They happen to be at the same time in two different locations. Like for this weekend, Leah will take our youngest to gymnastics. It's about 2.5 hours away. And then we're going to take our oldest to volleyball, which is about an hour away. And for that, we have to divide and conquer. And we just make that work. Sunday, we will still have some volleyball because it's a tournament. So we will all be there. My youngest daughter, my fiance, and my ex-wife, we will all be there. We might even ride together. We do that a lot because it's an hour away. Why not?
Yeah. And gas is expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Um, so for that stuff, we sit together.
Do you really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We sit together and, like I said, ride together. I don't know. It works.
So the kids get a full on cheering section when you're
Yeah.
both there.
So,
That's awesome.
so because there's times my parents will show up, or my brother, his family, my ex-wife's family will show up. Her parents go to a lot of stuff. We all sit together still. So like her parents, I'll be sitting right next to her dad. We still get along. So it our dynamic is very unique, and obviously it's not for everybody. But the thing is, for us, so I think we've went through so much struggle that we're enjoying the good now, because it's we went through 4 years of hell, hating each other, not talking very much because we just couldn't without arguing. And she was in and out of rehab for a while. And honestly, this sounds awful, but I think that might have softened things. Obviously, getting sober helps
Right.
regardless, but it softens the blow, when because I always told her, I'm like, because there was a point I had to take our daughters away from her, not give her overnights, and say, hey, I'll still let you visit them, but I need your parents or somebody involved that I trust. And so it just took time to trust me, I think, that my intentions were not to hurt her and they were just to protect our daughters.
For sure.
And so with the stints in rehab, like the last one, and now she's been sober a year and a half, which has been amazing.
That is
But
amazing.
she spent almost a year in the Atlanta, Georgia area, and we're in Michigan. So I was sole provider for the girls. I had them all the time, and her parents have always been the middle people, like the other co-parent in a way. And so we've all kind of just done all this together. Her parents always advocated. I always told them, look, I will do whatever's best for them. I've never kept them away from their family stuff, like Christmases, even when Leah wasn't around or whatever. Like, I've spent Thanksgiving with them when I was alone. They invited me over, thank God, because I was like, it was my first Thanksgiving alone. And I'm like, I didn't know what I was going to do.
Right?
It made me
That's
pretty
brutal.
emotional. Yeah. So we have all this intertwined dynamic, and it's just brought us all close. We're just all family. We're all just doing what's best. Two girls. We're all coming together, and we realize you get to a point you realize that obviously the divorce, it's been final for a long time, 7 8 years now, and you just get to a point it's like a sibling relationship
Right.
if you allow it to be it because they have to be in your life. You can't change who the mom is, you can't change who the dad is, and I don't care. I know some people have terrible situations, but that person is the mom or the dad, and so you don't speak illy of them. You let say you have a co-parent that's just awful. You protect your kids the best you can, and then you let them figure it out as they get older. Because if that person's so awful, they're going to be awful forever unless they change some things. And you just let your kids figure that out. Who's there for them? And
I will say that's a very common dynamic is where you have one parent that constantly badmouths the other parent.
yeah,
And it's even worse when they're both doing it. And then the kids are caught in the middle of it and they don't
yeah,
know what to think because they're just trying to navigate going to school and getting their homework done and then
yeah.
being shuttled around weekend to weekend between parents and hearing these two different opposing views all the time. And they're confused on how they should feel in that moment towards both parents. And that can, it definitely backfires.
You're only punishing the kids.
Right.
That's even if you don't have the best co-parenting. You don't have to have a co-parenting relationship like we do. And I know people think sometimes, oh, I'll never get there. And I thought that too, but you can just be civil. You can
Yeah.
just be civil. It, we just, we've been through so much. I think we are able to get along in a certain way and joke about things in a certain way. And it just works for us. Everybody, it's going to be different for everybody. But you really just, yeah, you got to stay away from bashing the parents. And because the kids, it just hurts the kids. They really hurt when that stuff happens, and they don't even realize it until they're older. You're really doing damage.
I wish it wouldn't happen, that it didn't have to happen that way. But there's just some people that can't see beyond the blame and the hurt and the anger and the frustration of that whole experience.
And the only person that suffers are those kids.
Absolutely.
We're adults. You gotta figure it out. The kids can't. They don't have the ability to figure it out. And my my oldest is a teenager right now, and it's like a daily conversation that she'll ask why of certain things, and I'm like, honey, I'm doing this because it's the best thing for you. You just can't understand it yet. There's so many things you can't process and understand yet. And I try to go in depth with things with her because she really wants to know why on things. And I'm like, I'm just trying to make you into a better adult someday. And you
Right.
just have to trust me that this is the way you do things. And that's very difficult.
Do you follow Ed Milet at all, or have you heard of
I
him?
don't know who that is. No.
He put out this thing, and I absolutely love it. And he's actually writing a book about it right now. But he tells his daughter and his son, let me tell you about you.
Mhm.
Anytime they're leaving the house, or the specific story he uses is that he drops his daughter off at school. She's walking towards the dorm room. They've ended the day. Dad's going home. And her whole life, he's told her, let me tell you about you. And then it goes into, you're beautiful, you're amazing, you're kind, you're a good soul, you're empowered, you're strong, you're capable, you can do all of these things. And it's really just, he's like the number one hype person for his kid. And when he dropped her off at school, this one time he just didn't do that. And he was waiting for her to hit the door to go into the dorm. And she hits the door, looks back at him, runs back to her dad and says, "Aren't you going to tell me about me?" And of course, they had a moment. He hugged her and he let her know, "Yeah, let me tell you about you." And it's just like such a powerful and strong moment that you can have with your child when you're their hype person, man. You're telling them how amazing they are, not to a detriment, right? Because there is reality. you know?
Yeah. And I'll be honest, that's something I'm trying to change a little bit because you get into, again, cycles, you get into these things, and teenagers can be so negative and so hot and cold, so hot and cold.
Yeah.
And so I've been focusing on because she'll even tell me, she's like, "You're only telling me when I do bad things or when I what I need to fix or when I'm screwing up." And I'm like, you know what? You have a fair point.
But
You have a
it's
fair
what
point.
we went through as
Yeah,
kids, you
and
know?
so I caught an opportunity the other day to she and it was a simple little one. Her friend lost her cell phone and she texted me because I was supposed to pick them up from a track meet. And she texted me and said, "Hey, we've been looking for a half hour for my friend's phone and we can't find it." And so I drive up there, I help them look a little bit. We come back home, didn't find the phone. And I had a moment where I'm sitting with her and I'm like, "Hey, you know what? You were a really good friend today."
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
this is going to take some work because she's like, duh, what else would I be? And I'm like, honey, I'm like, oh, I said, you said you wanted me to tell you the good things you do. And so I'm like, I'm trying to tell you that you were a really good friend because you spent a lot of time worrying about your friend's stuff. And not everybody would do that. Some people would just be like, "Yeah, I'm just going home." And I'm like, I'm trying to rewrite that negative thought process and
Right.
in my head and hers. So I'm trying to find all those moments, even if they're little, to be like, "Hey, you do this great." Because she's a really smart girl. She gets really good grades. And so I've never even had to worry about it. So we don't even talk about it much. I do
Right.
say I'm proud of her here and there, but it's not like and as humans too, because I've done it, I think we always hear the negative louder than we hear the positive. And
It's just there's so many things that happen in a day, and kids don't often hear things until they've done something wrong. So you've done
right,
all these things right, but there's been no praise or recognition or acknowledgement of saying, "You know what? I appreciate you when you do XYZ. Thank
right.
you for that. That's amazing." Or they did well on something and just reiterating their strengths. So you're absolutely right that yeah, the negative gets amplified because if you're not hearing the good, then there's no balance there. So you're
Right.
constantly hearing just the negative and that becomes your self-talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's what we're working on in this house.
That's
Trying
awesome.
to, yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough.
One of the areas they struggle with the most this generation seems to be with this overwhelming feeling of hopelessness. It's just in the scope of kind of talking to other people through social media and stuff like that. It's just interesting to me that that's the general consensus. And I think a lot of it relates to just that interaction that they're having with their parents or the lack thereof. And then just social media in general. And the fact that these kids, man, they're just, from my perspective, and having been a police officer previously, being on social media is to their detriment. It's not a
Yeah.
help, it's more of a
Yeah.
hindrance.
We don't allow that.
No, that's awesome. That's
And they
good.
beg, oh gosh, is that a fight? All our friends have Snapchat. I'm like, that's the last thing you're ever having.
Yeah.
All our friends have TikTok. All our friends have this, that. I'm like, honey, I'm not doing this because I don't like you and I want you to suffer. I'm doing this because I believe this is the absolute best thing for you. And that's one of the things I was just talking about. I was like, you don't understand that right now, and I can't even explain how it affects you. But trust me, and I've tried to show her like articles and videos of like people talking on this stuff because there's a lot of messages of very smart people and very technology savvy people who even say this stuff is not good for a kid's brain. And
Right.
I'm like, honey, when you're 18, you can figure this stuff out, but we are not. I'm not. going down this road. I'm like, adults can't handle Snapchat. There's no way you can handle it.
And even now with the introduction of AI, there's so
Ah,
many tools available now for scamming purposes that it's you
yeah.
really have to be careful. And it's one of those things that I've been encouraging people. If you don't have a password set up with your family for all family members,
Hmm.
just a particular word or phrase that you use to confirm that it's you, I
Hmm.
highly suggest that if you're having any type of phone conversations or anything like that going back and forth, messaging, that you acknowledge that password that you have between each other. If something feels a little off or it feels fishy, one of the scams that's happening right now is they call somebody's parent or grandparent and it's their kid, their voice. If you've ever created a video online, they have your voice and they can mimic it, and so they're literally hearing their kid at whatever age saying, "Hey, I just got in a car accident. I need money." Da, da, click. And then it moves into the scamming process of getting
That's
people
crazy.
pulled
I don't
into
know
that.
why anybody would need money after a car accident, but yeah, that's
Well,
crazy.
it's car accidents, it's jail,
Yeah.
it's all this stuff. And of course,
Gosh.
people are so unaware of the capabilities of AI at this point that they're just not talking about it enough. I'm making it a point, if you don't have a family passcode, create one. It's to your benefit
Wow.
to do
Yeah, that's a great idea.
so. All right, so let's move into some happy stuff.
Sure.
We've talked a lot about divorce and the pangs of co-parenting, but also the healthier aspect of what co-parenting looks like. You've recently posted more about this new relationship that you're in. Tell us about that. I saw that you were featured on Today, which I
Yeah.
thought was absolutely amazing. So
Crazy.
tell us how that went down, how you guys met, and how this all came to be. And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We met a couple years ago, actually. We were TikTok friends, and then for 2 years now, we've done kind of a smaller Detroit kind of meetup thing
Hmm.
where it's mostly people from Michigan. There's a few people that drive in, fly in, whatever. And so we met there a couple years ago. I happened to be seeing somebody else at that time, so it wasn't even a real thought or anything. And there were some other instances, hung out, we are friends or whatever. And then last year we had another one, and we just got talking, and one thing led to another, and we she lives by me, or she lived by me. So I'm like, we can hang out, go on a date, whatever, and see what happens and see where this goes. And it here it went.
Yeah.
we just It was like a perfect fit, talking to each other. We understood each other. We're both super easygoing people. So it's, which sometimes is like, what do you want to do? I don't care. What do you
I
want
don't
to do?
know. What do you want to do?
Sometimes one of us has to like step up and
Be
figure it out.
decisive. Yeah.
But we just, I think the biggest thing, I was thinking about this today because we just get along. We have not even really ever had to like get upset at each other. We just we have I actually told her, I was like, you know what, why I'm really thankful for you is because sometimes I'm dramatic, I'm a little extreme. I have this high energy, and sometimes the way I say things, it may be like somebody might think I'm mad or upset. And she just understands me, and she never even like she never even has a reaction. She just knows it's me being me. And so I was thinking, we don't ever have a misinterpretation of what somebody's meaning or what they're saying.
Isn't that just such a good feeling?
Oh my gosh, it makes everything just so easy. She never thinks I'm meaning something that I'm not, and it's the best thing ever. I had that so
You
much
get to be
before.
yourself.
Yeah.
She allows for you to be yourself. And
Mhm.
then that allows for you to show up in the relationship much more authentically. And
Mhm.
everybody's chill in the relationship because you guys are just both showing up as who you are.
Exactly. And it's
And
we love each other for exactly who each other is, and we remind each other daily. And so it's just, yeah, it's like bliss. It's like true bliss. I'm not
that's
even,
awesome.
yeah.
So, how did you get featured on Today?
Leah, my ex-wife, posted, she was here. So actually, let me back up.
Okay.
I We were, my fiance and my two daughters and their friends, we went to Chicago the weekend prior, and I was going to propose in Chicago. My daughters were impatient, and I never had a real good opportunity to do it. And so I was like, crap, it didn't work out. My daughters knew I had a ring. I just wasn't telling them when I was going to do it. Leah, my ex-wife, also knew I had a ring. And Leah, I think she might have known that I was trying to do it in Chicago. Maybe not. Maybe she was just asking me. So when we got back from Chicago, she goes, "When are you going to propose?" This is my ex-wife saying this.
That's great.
And I'm like, I was going to do it in Chicago and it just didn't work out. And she's like, "We'll do it this weekend." And I'm like, I don't have, it was her weekend for the girls. And I'm like, I want the girls to be there. And I,
You're
I'm
like,
going to
stop
wait.
trying to control me. I'll do it when I want to do it.
Yeah. I'm like, I really want the girls to be there. It's very important to them and
Yeah.
important to me. And she's like, I can bring them over. I'm like, okay, this might work. And so we had some errands to run that day. It was Saturday, April 1st. And we went to lunch. And so Leah was, I'll bring the girls over. Just tell me when you're on your way. So we were texting back and forth a little bit. And she brought them in, which is not unnormal or abnormal because sometimes they forget stuff. They're in and out all the time. The door's open for them. They know how to get in anytime. And so we get home and they're all here, but they're all sitting on the couch, which is different. That doesn't happen because usually Leah will just sit in the car and wait for the girls. And so we walk in. Shonda, thankfully, unassuming, she had no idea. She just she walks in, hugs them all, and as soon as she stepped away from hugging all three of them, she noticed the candles were lit, and that's when it hit, and you can see her face go just totally change. And so Leah started recording, and thank God she was there to record because we wouldn't have that moment.
Yeah. It's a great
And
moment.
so she posted the video with captions saying, "I got to record my ex-husband's proposal and all this stuff." And it blew up. I think it's almost at 8 million views on her account. And gosh, who reached out to us first?
And you're like, again, you're welcome, by the way.
I told her she owes me about 30 million views right now because there's another video that had a 20 million. It's crazy.
Right.
But somebody reached out to me. I think it was today, and they asked if they could use the video and write an article. Me and Leah had a quick interview over the phone. It was maybe 20 minutes. And we just told them what was going on. And then People magazine reached out and wanted to reuse it. And we were like, okay, which we didn't really talk to them. And then Good Morning America, it was like every day was a new person. I'm like, holy crap, what is happening right now? And then Good Morning America was like, can we get on a Zoom call with all three of you? And we're like, sure.
Yes.
Yeah. We're like,
Yeah.
we made it happen. Actually, it was very difficult to make happen, but we made it happen. I'm like, this is a once in a lifetime thing. We have to make this work.
Yeah.
And so we spent 45 minutes on a Zoom call with them, and it was an awesome interview. And so that was like 2.5 weeks ago. They're still working on, I think they're putting together a video, a whole of the interview and everything. So there's more
So
to
like
come out.
that's awesome. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
He's been texting me. He's been asking for different kinds of pictures and more things as of 2 days ago. So it's supposed to be out this week, but I don't know if it'll still be out. And then WGN Chicago Radio wanted a radio interview, and we were on vacation, me and Shonda, and so we were in our hotel, and we're like, sure, we'll do it. And all three of us were on there and had I don't know, it was about 10 minutes of a live. We were live on the radio. I'm like, no pressure, like being live because you gotta spit out
Yeah.
what you gotta say. But that was a cool experience, and so it was like one day after another. It's been pretty wild, but it's all slowed down and it's been fun. It's At least if you're going to blow up for something, it's something that can help people potentially.
Yeah, something positive. I
Yeah.
did see that video you posted on that as well, where it was
Yeah.
just like, if there's one thing that you're going to be known for after all the negative things that have happened or occurred, it's amazing that you get this opportunity. It's just such
Yeah.
a good opportunity.
Mhm.
And that expose that People's going to put out is going to be awesome. People are
Yeah.
going to love that.
Yeah. I
So
hope so.
that's real. No,
I'm
that's really
excited for it.
cool.
I'm excited for it.
So, what's next for you as a content creator? Because you've built this platform, you've got over 420,000 followers. You're definitely doing some brand deals. I noticed. I'm a little jealous because I could use that shaver.
Yeah.
So, what's next as a creator for you? What's going to happen?
I just I just take it day by day. I don't really have plans. I just honestly I had slowed down a lot making content just because I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. There's just it's a lot different than it used to be a couple of years ago.
True.
There's not as many like easy, silly dances I can turn into my own, and there's not like I don't share as much. Like I used to probably overshare, and I realized after sharing so much, some of the negative things that came in, I'm like, I don't have to deal with this, so I don't share as much.
Yeah, you
Um,
definitely don't have to deal with that for
right?
sure.
It's because and but the thing is, too, people can turn anything into a negative. You can have a negative comment on anything. You can
Dude,
be,
it's the most benign thing, something so simple.
yeah,
And then they just come in and they destroy
it's
you. And you're
it's
like,
crazy.
why?
Yeah,
Like, I think somebody needs a nap. I think you need to go
yeah.
for a walk and maybe you need to eat something. Like
Well,
there's something.
it just shows you the negative mindset of people.
Well, a lot of
It's
people
too
are
bad.
struggling and have
Yeah.
been since 2020.
But yeah, we'll still be if she just left me a doorbell video the other day. So those which is it's hard to even come up with ideas for that. Sometimes I'll just have something stupid I want to say off the top of my head and I'll be like, okay. I'll go if I'm dropping off the girls or something and I'll run up there and do something stupid. And so those will probably keep going because those people just love those. And
They're fun, they're lighthearted,
yeah,
you
people
know.
get a good response to those. And I don't know, just more family stuff, more whatever comes about. Really, I have no direction. I do whatever I feel like doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Steve, where can everybody find you? We've talked about TikTok. Are you on any other social media? Is there some place we can direct
I am
people?
on Instagram, which is also linked in my TikTok, but it's
Okay.
Steve Bourdo 11, and then I am on Facebook, Steve Bourdo. Google my name. I'm the only person that's there, and I'll bring up all this stuff. But yeah, pretty much Steve Bourdo anywhere is where you'll find me, and I'm Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I really don't spend a whole lot of time on those because, like I said, when I started this TikTok thing, I wasn't even. I'm like, why would anybody even want to be famous on social media or have a following? What's the point of having a following? It's stupid to me.
You've done it and you've done it
Yeah.
well. So, there's a lot of good things yet to come for you. I know for
Yeah.
sure.
I hope so.
For sure. All right, Steve, thanks for coming. I appreciate you being on the podcast.